Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Marco Podcast.
A show dedicated to the realness of organization and entrepreneurship. This space was created for every woman who needs motivation or inspiration to get organized and to keep going after her dream. I'm your host, Angel J. Sit back and prepare for valuable tips, resources, laugh, and much more. If this is your first time here, welcome and thanks for joining. If you've been hanging around for a while, welcome back, and I hope you brought a friend. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I am talking with Bianca Sprague. Bianca is the founder of Bebo Mia, and she has been a dedicated educator, author, activist, and doula since 2007. She is passionate about accessible pre- and postnatal care for marginalized communities. She advocates for mental wellness in families, drawing from her struggle with postpartum depression and family experiences. Bianca champions reproductive health and justice, focusing on breaking down barriers for female and queer entrepreneurs and restoring joy, equality, and safety in family care through her expertise and innovative approaches. Everyone, let's welcome Bianca. Hi, Bianca. How are you?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm very well on this
Well,
stormy day in Eastern Canada.
oh, well, I was going to ask you where you were from. So Eastern Canada, and it's stormy there. That stinks. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you're here with us on the stormy day. It was storming a little bit here earlier today, and then it stopped, and it turned out to be a bright, sunny, very hot day. So I'm not looking forward to the summertime here. I think it was like 90 degrees today. So yes, it's only going to get worse. So not looking forward to it. So, is there anything else that you would like to add to your introduction before we get started?
No, but I was getting all full of emotion hearing you read about me.
I love when people say that. I've had so many people that like will look at it and will not look at it obviously, but like hear me reading it and they're like, "Oh wow, I did that." It's always cool to see people's reaction when I read their bio.
It was so nice. I loved it. I should have someone follow me on low days just reading about me.
I love it. Yes, just have somebody read about how you are and what you've got going on whenever you're feeling a little down. It's in your bio that you've been a doula since 2007. So how did you start in your entrepreneur journey? And yeah, how did you start in it?
Well, I had just had a baby, so I highly recommend that you don't have a baby and start a business in the same month.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yes, but my plan was always to be an obstetrician, and after the birth of my daughter, I realized how much harm came at the hands of my doctor, and I realized that I could not continue on my journey to be, participating in the system. And so I pivoted, and I actually loved the role of my doula. And so I had a brand new baby, went back to school a couple weeks later,
Oh wow.
and I really started problem solving and building community, which was all the things that I was lacking. So anything that I suffered through is through my pregnancy, my birth, and my immediate postpartum period, I started solving. And I realized, you know, and my business just kept growing because I'd solved the next problem, and then, I'd need some staff. And so I found that the training was really subpar that I took that was available at the time. And so I started an in-house training to make sure that the people who worked with my clients had a way more comprehensive training. And before I knew it, I had a training organization, which
Oh
was
wow.
not what I set out to do when I had just had my daughter. And um I think the conversation around problem solving and community building are like the foundational conversations when we talk about entrepreneurship. And, you know, if I could not imagine that how old was I? 26-year-old kid pacing. I had no money. I had no support. I was in domestic violence. I had the motivation to build a business so that I could get out of that house and be able to live with my daughter. And so I had the hustle of necessity. But also it was just such a gradual, year over year. And so now almost 20 years later, I can look back and I mean, I can't, where I've come, it's just wild to me. And we have students in 49 countries now. We've built this incredible movement that is all around supporting both women and queer folks through care, as well as women and queer folks through entrepreneurship. And so it's like this really cool cycle that solved all the problems that I was trying to solve for myself in, one big, beautiful movement.
Okay. Wow, that is really cool. And congratulations on,
Thank you.
growing it. Well, for starting a business and having a newborn. That's like having two newborns at the same time. So yeah, going back to school, starting a business, having a newborn, and then growing it over these years. So, and I mean, it's also awesome too, because your business and your daughter have literally grown together. So
They have. I
yeah.
know, it's true.
Okay, so how did you come up with the name for your business? Because I like it. So how did you come up with the name for
Oh my God, girl. The things I wish I knew that I know now. Okay, so here's what it looked like. I had a business partner at the time, and she stepped back, and I bought her out in 2021, I guess. But
it?
this was back, so taking it way back to the origin, and we were sitting around a table, and we really wanted to make sure everyone felt really good in our brand. And at the time, we were a brick and mortar in Toronto, and so we had people coming to our space, and we had a fertility program, and then pregnancy programs and parenting programs. And we had to be really mindful of what we were building, because the trying to conceive population doesn't usually like to meld with the pregnant and the new parent population, because there's usually a lot of, stress and trauma around that trying to conceive
Right.
journey. So we were at the drawing board trying to be really mindful of our three communities that we were serving. And so we thought, well, let's look at some other languages. And then we wanted to not have a language that was going to be, we didn't want to show favoritism to anyone,
Right.
anyone group.
Right.
And so we looked to Esperanto. And I don't know if anybody knows this language. It's kind of a dead language. And it
I was
was
just gonna say, I've never
created.
heard of it.
Yeah, that's a perfectly valid thing. But it was a language that was created to in the basis of the foundation of peace, and to have no attachment to any like creed, religion, nation. And so it was supposed to be the universal language. So we were like, well, this feels pretty cool. But we took it like 10 steps too far, and we had our menu in Esperanto. We had our parts of our website in Esperanto, and people would be like, can I get the Plato package? And we're like, yeah, yeah. Anyway, the things I know now, I think it's fun because it's unique and
Right.
memorable, and we can protect it with IP. However, most people spell it wrong. Most people say it wrong. And so as far as SEO goes, it's a gift and a curse.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, I like. Yeah, it's definitely something different. It's something that sticks out. It is memorable, but yeah, I've also definitely never heard of that language before.
Esperanto.
Yeah, so I learned something new today. So cool. I like that. So
Oh, and
so
it means my baby. On a side note, it means my baby.
it
So
means
because
my
we thought
baby.
that was.
Okay,
Yeah, because that was the common denominator. People either wanted a baby, were having a baby, or had a baby. And
had a
so we
baby.
thought that felt like the right entry point.
Yeah, no, I like it. Like it sounds like, from what you've told me so far about your business, it sounds like it really goes well with it, and it
It does.
flows with it. So it's just no one knows the language, but that's okay. So we are educating them on it today. So you said that you started off with a business partner and then you brought her out. So that kind of leads me into my next question. Like, what are some of like the messy sides of entrepreneurship, and how do you handle it?
Oh, there's so many messy sides. So many people have these really great ideas, and they're like, "Oh, I could just start a business." It's so common. And like people eat
Yeah.
at a restaurant and they're like, "We could do this," or they stay in an Airbnb and they're like, "We could do this." There's a lot of mess behind the scenes. I mean, the separation of my business partner and I was actually not messy, which was really
Oh, that's
nice.
good.
It was in the pandemic, so it was felt really like arm's length, and then we never really circled back. So that part was a
Yeah.
little bit weird. But we did have a lot of messy folks that came and went through we were together for 13 years with our as business partners. So I think some of the major consistent messy spots are when people don't have contracts and clear agreements. And
Mhm.
I know that sounds like not super sexy. It's not super sexy part of business, but clear is kind, and having a protocol for when something goes wrong. And most of the time something's going to go wrong. And it might not even be bad wrong. It's just life wrong, like not wrong, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so I would say those the lack of agreements is any deeply uncomfortable or really expensive mistake we ever made was always because there was vagueness in an agreement or a lack of agreement or like a friendship promise or, those kinds of things. Um,
Yes.
so I mean, there's messy stuff. Like one of the things I really like, which I do a lot of consulting for entrepreneurs, and one of the things that I always talk about is the art of the messy start, and that means it's going to have some like, it's going to be a bit clunky, but you actually can grow the fastest and you learn the most and you tailor your business to exactly the like people you want to serve in the way you want to serve them when you just get started and then you get feedback. And so some people might call that like that there's mistakes or that it's like, it's not really streamlined. But if you're trying to make sure everything's perfect before you release it, A, you're going to be tied up for a really long time. B, you actually don't know what perfect is until you have feedback from community. And most of the time, entrepreneurs decide they want to release something because it feels important to the entrepreneur, whether it's a product or a service, and then they release it and then they try to sell it, rather than listening, talking, getting like real deep in with the people that you want to be serving and helping and creating solutions for. And then you listen to their problems and you solve with exactly what their problem is. And I honestly, like, I know it sounds like I might be coming down on entrepreneurs. I do this over and over again because I'll have ideas at like midnight and I'll write them down and then I'll pour like 3 days into creating a workshop or writing an
Me too.
ebook.
Yep.
It felt important to me, and then I put it out and like 6 people buy it or download it, and I'm like, because to me it does make sense that I'm like,
Right.
"You should get this. This will help you." But if people don't see it as a solution to their problem, they they don't want it. Like, if you go through the mall, even if somebody's like, "It's half off. I'll give you 2 for 1. You can buy 3 pairs of these khakis," like, and they just make the deal sweeter and sweeter, you're like, "I don't want these brown corduroy pants," or like, "I don't want
Right.
these stilettos. I don't want them. They could be all the best things, but like I don't wear heels." Um, and so that's really, I'd say, the probably one of the biggest problems, that also is kind of like a bit of a trap for entrepreneurs, is this idea of creating a product and trying to sell it rather than solving a problem and just waving it, waving the flag, because then people will run to you. But
Yeah.
both of those things can look a little messy. They're not super planned. You usually do a beta project, if not like 3 betas, which are not what you imagine. The website will have some glitches because you have to see how people move through it before you like lock down your page, or, there's all these things. So long to drag out an answer. I'd say there's
No.
room for mess. Some of it's really good, which is the messy start and feedback, and some of it not so good, which is the lack of contracts or agreements or clear policies and procedures.
No, I absolutely loved your answer because so much of that I'm just like, yep, been there, done that before, because I too am the person that will have like the idea at midnight or just a random idea and I'm like, okay, this is great. Like I said, and I don't know about you, but you sound kind of similar to me. It's like once I get the idea in my head, that's it. I have to run with it and I have to
Yes.
get it out as soon as possible. Like how you said, oh, I'll spend 3 days working on it. Like that's me. I'll spend the next 3 days, week, 2 weeks, however long I feel like needs to go into it, working on it. And then I'll put it out and I'm like, well, nothing happened. And I spent all my time working on this when I could have been doing other stuff. And
Yes.
that's something that we see.
Devastating.
Yes, it's very devastating, but it's also, I feel like what we're kind of trained and taught to think as entrepreneurs is like, you have to hurry up and get this out. As soon as the idea pops in your head, you have to get it out, or someone else is going to take the idea. And then I also think that we're so trained to see, okay, well, this person over here is doing this and it worked for them. So let me come over here and do it. And then you're wondering why it's not working for you. Well, you all aren't looking at y'all don't have the same target audience. You're not trying to send the same message. Like it's completely different. It's completely different. What works for them isn't going to work for you. So I definitely get that. And then with contracts as well, especially when you're dealing with friends, it's like, oh, okay, they're a friend. I don't have to worry about a contract, or, oh, okay, they promised this, they're not going to go back on their word. And it's like, well, just because you're a person of your word and you're true to your word, everyone is not true to their word. And that's something that else that I've had to learn is just like, okay, we need a contract, we need some type of agreement or something like that before we do any type of business, friends, family, whoever. Like, business is business. We have to set that aside and we need to get this in place so that we know what's going on. So I
And
like that you shared that.
and even when, if like on that tip, like even if you guys both are the bestest people that always have the bestest
Mhm.
integrity, there's going to be things that you have to sort out. Like, for example, if you do a project, even if it's a short-term project, so say you and we do like, I don't know, a weekend series for 3 weeks,
Mhm.
and about fill in the blank, some business topic. So at the end of it, we know we're going to be separating. Like, this is, so we've decided how much the revenue is, blah, 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 all these things. But like, there's things that come up. Like, if we had Facebook ads, whose account did they go on to? And then who gets
Right.
that algorithm support, and who had to pay for them? If we bought images, who gets those images? If there's a
Mhm.
mailing list, who gets that mailing list? And so there's things that I'm like, it's not even a fight. It's just, if it blows up and somebody wants us to run it again, but they like don't want one of us on it, if they're like, yeah, we just want you and not Bianca, what does that look like? So what is the next negotiation? And so there's all these pieces that are not even because somebody's going to be shisty. I mean, a lot of people are super shisty, but
Right.
it's really just like, we have these assets now. And then maybe I want to run the program again. Do I have to give you a cut if I do it on my own, or if I talk about it on a podcast? And so you have to establish these things. And it's every time you do a project with someone, someone's going to leave it. They're either going to not want to do it anymore, they're going to die, or they're going to stop working. And so
Right.
like, every single project, long or short term, is going to end because we retire, and
Right.
and so um,
Exactly.
and so these are the places that can get really messy. And so there's lots of workarounds around how to solve that. But trying to do your best at the kitchen table is a good starting place. And then if it starts becoming profitable, as soon as it starts becoming profitable, or there'd be room for like maybe some issues later, I would highly recommend you hire somebody to look at it. Yeah, I don't think you need to invest in it if you don't have an idea that you've tested as it for viability. But as soon as you do, get counsel and get something laid out, because it's really messy and it's really expensive fighting over contracts, and nobody wins. Like, nobody walks away better if it gets like at all litigious. So that's
Oh
that's my
yeah.
pro tip number one.
Well, thank you. No, I definitely appreciate that because I mean, with the contract, like if you don't have, the contract or anything like that in place, and then it's kind of a he said, she said type of thing. And well, who promised this and who actually promised that? And in the end, it's probably just going to end up with, okay, neither party can no longer, do
Yeah.
this. And so now it's like, well, now nobody got it. So it's better just to get it in writing so that you can know from the jump. And then if things happen to take off more than you thought they would or something like that, okay, let's go back and revisit the contract, but at least get it down in writing
Yeah.
so that you don't have those issues. So I agree with
Yes.
that. Yes. And so with building a business, I know I see a lot of this, and I talk about this on the show a lot, those like 0 to 20K, and how I went from, 0 clients to 50 clients in 2 days and stuff like that. And so many people see that and they think that's what entrepreneurship is. And they think, like you said earlier, I have this idea to start this business and I'm just going to make, $1 million in a week and I'm going to be good. And then when that doesn't happen, you're devastated. So, how long does it take to actually build a business and grow from
Well, okay, I'm gonna be like the super spoiler alert over here.
it?
um I mean, there's some things that people put out and it's just like the perfect timing, and they didn't have a lot of the foundation, and they might make a bunch of money or have a bunch of downloads, or like it just worked out. Those are very, very rare. And they usually don't come unless you have a large amount of funding behind it, which many of us don't. I would say most of us don't. If they have a very solid connection, like their black book is impressive, they come from family money, they partnered with somebody, like whatever, there's something else that gives them a bit of nepotism. Those
Mhm.
people do have almost instant success. But you don't want instant success because you typically need to have a strong foundation. So if you want something like that's really quick and you just keep cycling through with kind of a fad products or fad businesses, and then you close and you do a new fad business, then maybe. But if you really want to put your heart and have this be something more than just like a way to make money quick, and like the people who capitalize on something that's got a shipment issue, or like get something on Amazon that there's a shortage of, like those are the like get rich quick schemes, and they're a gamble. So for every time it works for somebody, they've had 5 or 6, maybe even 10 or 20 that didn't work. But for you to truly build a business that feels good for you and it's doing good for the world in some capacity, which can be like joy through leisure, through healing services, through products that make somebody's life easier, products or services. It takes time. It takes time. It takes community building. It takes relationships. It takes testing, and going back to the drawing board. It takes, there's growth that happens. And so if somebody does, like, there is a tipping point, right? Where suddenly your business, 2020 for me was a tipping point. We had really consistent growth. And then there was just that thing. There was the perfect timing. There was the perfect environment. There was just, all of these things that happened when the lockdown first happened, and people really wanted to do online education. And I had moved exclusively online in 2013. So by the time 2020 came around, I had mastered the digital space. I knew how to deliver an amazing course in a community in the digital space. And so we were ready for it. And so, we had an amazing 7-figure year in that time, which was great because I believe in feminist business practices. So it gave us a whole lot of money to move into feminist flow, and pay for bail bonds for folks that had been arrested during the Black Lives Matter protests. And we got to support folks that were unhoused due to their loss of jobs from the pandemic. Like, we did really, really good work with all this money that we we had worked towards. And then as much as people were like, oh, look at all this stuff, when the lockdown continued, doulas weren't allowed in the space. And so I trained doulas. It would be crazy for somebody to spend money on a training that they're not able to go do. So as much as we had a high because of the environment was perfect, we then had a low right after that. Which we're still like trying to pull out of there, between the recession and the lockdowns. It had a huge impact on my business. And so, but I have a solid foundation and I have a community that trusts us because we've been doing the same really important work in a consistent way for a long time. And so, we still, even though there was some like lag, we still were talked about, we're still respected, we're still asked to be on podcasts and to be interviewed in, editorials. We still have students post about us. We still get speaking. Like, I have a foundation as an expert who's respected in my field. And that is because we did the slow and steady, community and relationship first. And, you know, it doesn't make you as profitable as fast, but it makes you solid and sustainable. And I take solid and sustainable over like high fast peaks and the lows that come after that. And so if somebody is promising you 20 clients overnight, um that's probably not accurate. Like there's I mean, I have a course that says, 7 steps to doubling your client load, but I've tested it and I can say if you do it, you can double your client load, but it's not instant. It is 7 steps. But it does take, some of the steps will take you 3 days. And consistency is key, like, which is really hard for a lot of, I typically support women and queer folks, and we usually have the least time to work on our businesses because we do so much, unpaid labor and emotional support and invisible labor. So everything that I do is I want people to learn how to have a sustainable, consistent business, which might only be nap time when their kids are at nap, or like half day of daycare, or only between 8 and 2, which is not a full work day, or 9 and 2, while they're at school. And so I think how we do business, it's, this just kind of like consistent, one step in front of the other. But what happens is we keep seeing this, like, buy this course and you can get 100,000 Instagram followers overnight, which you might not need. I hope you asked me about that because
Yeah.
you're striving for something that I was like, you don't need 100,000. If you're a local fill in the blank card maker, you're a local babysitter, you're a local housekeeper, you're a local naturopathic doctor, it doesn't matter. You don't need
Right.
100,000 followers, so don't waste your
Right.
time getting them. And so then you don't get 100,000 followers in 30 days. And so then you pivot over here, start your online course and make, $100,000 in your first quarter. And then you go to do that and it didn't work. And so you're just like pinballing around, accomplishing nothing. Instead of just picking a thing, setting a goal that makes sense for you, you can have a 6-figure business with 1,000 followers on your Instagram. You have to realize, like, why would you need 20 clients? Why would you need 10,000 fill in the
Right.
blank? Like, and figure out what you actually need for your business to hit the markers that will be achievable, sustainable, and joyful for you.
Right. And I say all the time, I'd rather have $100,000 than 100,000 followers because
100%.
I mean, okay, cool. You have 100,000 followers, like, yay, but what are they buying from you? How are they helping you reach your goals other than the fact to say that you have 100,000 followers who are probably paying you absolutely no attention? So, like you said, focus on building that foundation and focus on nurturing the 20 followers that you have or the 20 people on your email list. Like, they're there for a reason and
Yeah.
they want to, participate for a reason. And even I used to, when I first started off in business, some of the groups and stuff that I was in, and some of them still do it, like they'll be like follow for a follow Monday or stuff like this. And at first I would do it because I was like, oh yeah, you got to get all these people and follow all these people. And then I realized, I'm like, why? I'm following these people. I'm not interested in what they're doing. They're not interested in what I'm doing. We're just doing this to get more followers to make us look
Totally.
important. And now all we're doing is clogging up each other's news feed with stuff that we don't want to see and that that we're going to scroll through. And so now I'm way more conscious about the accounts and stuff that I follow. Like, I'll follow people who I've obviously done like podcasts, who's been on my podcast, or if I've been on their podcast, or people who I've like actually made a connection with or something, but I don't
Mhm.
participate in the follow for a follow things anymore unless I just happen to see a person, unless when I'm like scrolling through and I see an account that just pops out at me and I'll be like, oh, let me go check it out. But other than that,
Yeah,
no, because like you said, why?
totally.
If you're a local business, why do you need 100K followers? How is that helping
Yeah,
you grow?
it's
So
100%. Y'all,
yeah.
I made $1 million, and a true $1 million, not when people are like, I made $1 million. I made $1 million. We had that many zeros in our bank account, and I had
Wow.
8,700 followers. That's 8,700 followers
Followers.
on
Wow.
Instagram. TikTok didn't
Wow.
exist. Well, it was like 1 minute old. And so and I'm not making $1 million right now, and I have 3 times that number of followers. And so I think it's about the quality that you are engaging with. It's why, like, our email marketing is really solid. Our community group is really solid. We do a lot of meetups, we do clubs, like we have all these other things. So I don't depend upon my Instagram channel the way some people might.
Right.
So it doesn't reflect your business. And if I mean, I do, I fall in the trap. There's so many traps around social media. And when I'm feeling scrambled, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I'm feeling discouraged, I start chasing likes and it like messes up my whole week. I get in this like weird, like hungry ghost feeling. There's scarcity comes up. I just start copying. And I can lose like 4 hours just like refreshing and seeing what somebody else did. And I have to remember being like, that's what they're doing. Like, stay
Right.
in your lane, Bianca. That's not what what you're here to do. And it's to protect women and queer folks through reproductive health and justice. And like, if they're going to do it that way, that's fine. But in the time that you were trying to get more likes, 20 more Black women died in the giving birth in the hospital. Hate crimes happened to the queer community, and it snaps me back. It's back to reality, being like, right, we have stuff to do, and
Right.
it's not chasing likes and follows. But
Exactly.
I do think that social media is a really great origin story for building your community for a local business. And so I do have like a really great method so that you do use it to kind of like yellow pages faster for you.
Gotcha.
But that's as far as you use it as a tool.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I've definitely like limited my time on social media. I'll schedule my posts because I got caught up in the whole, oh, you have to post every day and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't have time for that. Nor do I feel like posting every single day or trying to come up with content every single day. Like, I'm not a social media content creator. That's not my wheelhouse. That's not my niche. That's not what makes me happy and brings me joy. And so I schedule my posts, like I schedule them through Canva. And I schedule and forget about it. And I may go on social media like on like Instagram or something like that every other day. I do sometimes end up going down a Facebook rabbit hole, but that's because my notifications actually show up. So I'll go to like check a notification and then a funny reel will end up catching my eye. But I'm usually just like scrolling through reels, not actually looking at anybody's stuff. But then Instagram, like even on my personal Instagram account, somebody one day was like, I sent you something on Instagram like 3 days ago. I was like, did you really? Because yeah, I haven't been on there. I was like,
Oh,
sorry.
it's in dead zone.
Yeah.
My
I was like,
wife
oh,
does it to me all the time. She'll be like,
yeah.
"Hey, did you see that thing I sent you?" I was like, "No, woman.
No.
What?
Yeah,
You've
no.
not learned about me? No, I don't look
Yeah,
at my DMs."
exactly. Not at all. And it's like, oh, you sent it to me on my personal account too. Like usually it's just on my business account so that I can feel like, I'm actually being productive when I go on there. And so yeah, I'll go on there like maybe every other day or something like that. And I'll do a quick scroll. And then usually I end up getting off because the algorithm, even though I've refreshed it, the algorithm hasn't refreshed itself. And I was like, I saw this the last time I was on here.
Yeah.
So I'm over it. But then when I like, it'll crack me up sometimes because I'll get a like and it'll be like, oh, somebody liked your reel. And I'm like, I put a reel out there? Like, what did I do? And I'm like, oh, because I do reels for my podcast episodes. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was scheduled to post. Oops, I forgot. So I get it. So and then you talked about, well, actually I had another question before I asked you this. You said that you switched over. So you started off as a brick and mortar and then you switched over to digital. What made you do the switch?
Yeah, so my business partner Tash, we were in Toronto, and her husband at the time got a job in Vancouver. So anybody
Okay.
that doesn't know Canadian geography, that's about 3,000 miles apart.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
so we had to get really creative because at the time we actually had a chain. So we had about 14 centers across Toronto. And so when she said she was moving, I was like, well, we're pivoting because I don't want to do that by
Yeah,
myself.
I
I
don't
don't want
blame
to
you.
maintain them. And so we closed them all. And at the time, there wasn't Kajabi or Teachable or all of these things. And so we had to build a teaching platform so that we could teach live in the digital space
Mm.
without any of those things existing. And GoToWebinar was brand new at the time, which was like a big deal, but like integrating and nothing had, well, there was no APIs for any of these. So like we couldn't connect any of these pieces of software. It was so clunky. It was so ugly, but we essentially built like the original Kajabi. and
Oh wow.
um,
Okay.
yeah. And so we really wanted to have the same feel that we had in our brick and mortar because I loved our classes and our lessons and the community building. And so once we started building it, though, we realized we solved so many other problems for folks. So people who live rurally could access education easier. People
Oh.
living with visible and invisible disabilities. Our market was typically new moms when it's really hard to leave to go to school, but it's way easier to sign up for a course and be home and
Mhm.
you could still be feeding from your body or putting your kids to bed and having your AirPods in or those kinds of things. And so it really strengthened our market. But funny enough, my industry was horrified. Like other doula training organizations were like, you cannot teach in the digital space. How are you going to teach about like how to care for people in childbirth on a screen? And so we were pretty shunned, which is
Mhm.
fine. I like building my own community anyway,
Yeah.
which is funny because then the pandemic hit, 6 years later and everybody moved into the digital space and
Right.
learned that you could teach online. And so that's another reason why the industry's got a bit bogged down. Like we were the only, and we were kind of the black sheep for being this like committing to learning in the digital space. But it was really cool because we do have some evergreen programs, but we teach live. So everybody logs into their classroom, which is now a little bit more common post pandemic. But
Right.
at the time, people did have evergreen things, but you log in and you just get access to your videos and those kinds of things. But we deliver our whole program live in the flesh. Well, live in the digital flesh.
That's cool. So y'all were ahead of the times, and then everyone
Yeah.
else kind of jumped on board when they realized they didn't have a choice. So
Yes.
wow.
Yes.
So okay. So that's awesome. So I mean, wow, it's amazing how one simple thing can just change everything and make you have to pivot and recreate stuff. And that's awesome that you all took the time, because it could have went a completely different way when your business partner's like, okay, we're moving 3,000 miles away. It could have just been, okay, we're just going to shut everything down. But
Yeah.
y'all worked through it. You sat down, you took the time to build it. And again, like, you had that foundation already built. So now it's like, now it's time to add on to it and extend it and, redo some things. And so that's really cool. And yeah, it's kind of paved the way for the rest of the doulas to enter the digital world. It's like y'all went
Yes.
through it so they don't have to try to figure it out on their own. So
Yeah, and it was ugly, y'all. Like, oh my goodness. Our first, before the webinar software, because it was brand new to be able to do webinars. And so they were still trying to figure out they could put it in places, like how it could be embedded. And they hadn't sorted it out yet. And so we had to do our first webinar while they were trying to set up how it will fit into our WordPress site. And we did a teleseminar. And so people called in to this number, and you sit on the phone and listen to a webinar. And Natasha and I had little kids, and so we had to drive in my car and go to a empty parking lot and do it from the speakerphone on my phone, because then we knew kids weren't around, and
right,
people could see what the steps are. Like that's what it looks like.
right.
And running our first teleseminar, which I laugh
Was
about now, but like that's pretty cool. Just a couple of moms building a business.
business, right? And that again, that shows like the realness and the rawness of entrepreneurship, and that okay, I had to pivot, I had to shift. This wasn't what I was planning for, but it happened, and we can either take this and run with it, or we can just give up on everything that we worked for, and that's what
Yeah.
happens a lot of times. So
Yeah, we got our first 6 people in our program, and it was such a big deal to us, and we ran this 16-week program with 6 people, and that was really cool. I mean, now I expect 200 and between 150 and 250 for our classes, because they're live, so we do want to like be able to answer everybody's questions and engage with them. But like when we first ran it our first cohort, our first digital cohort, I think we had 6, and that was in 2012. And so, it took us running, and we have 2 semesters a year. And then, so you can see like that was the growth trajectory of really solid word of mouth, happy clients, like solid business. It was, we had 6, and then we had 20, and then we had 30, and then we had 60, and it goes up like that. But between each one of those is a 6-month marketing and launching cycle. So it's not like we ran it one time and then just the next time there's a bunch of people. So we'd run weekly webinars once we got our webinar thing started out. We weren't on a teleseminar. But like, I want to share those things so that people know that it was, 3 to 6 months of work, and then the class size would double. But so anytime people say like, oh, I doubled year or session over session, quarter over quarter, like there was a lot that happened in those things. It's not just because you did it one time well, it's going to exponentially grow like that.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. You get the public sees the finale. They don't know what happened during the dress rehearsal and everything else that was going on. So
Yes.
yeah. And so you've talked a lot about community. And so what are some things that like entrepreneurs can do to help build that community?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we think about service-based businesses, which are much easier, so there's way more of them, and that's
Mhm.
at any of you that are copywriters, housekeepers, babysitters, doulas, naturopathic doctors, massage therapists, graphic designers, like any of those things. Um, it can be really hard to either cut through the noise if there's a lot of, like, a graphic designer, for example, you can be located anywhere, so it's a little bit harder because you're competing in a much bigger market. But if you're doing something that's like in real life, so you have to actually go to your clients, you're a massage therapist, you're a doula, you're doing holistic nutrition, you're cooking for somebody. Um, the community piece, we actually rely way more on word of mouth and referrals than like just scanning for those kinds of services. Like they're not as much like Google and check Google reviews, although some people would start there, but you usually ask other businesses or other people that you trust. And this is why I'm like, don't get in the trap of trying to get a whole bunch of likes and follows, and take that time, get on your social media and follow the businesses that your clients would also use. And so, literally, step one, I'm going to walk you guys through the first few steps. Go find 10, 20 businesses a day that your clients would also use. So, if they like massage, they probably also like chiropractic care. They probably also take a yoga class or do meditation. They might see a naturopath. They might see a Reiki practitioner. They might, like really start thinking about, they might go to your local health food store, um, all these other services. They might go get their or like their shoes fitted at the like nicer running store, like a running room, how they do those fittings, those kind of things. So like really think outside the box and go follow those small businesses. And then I want you to start liking their stuff, commenting on it, sharing it, talking about it, so that by the end of a couple weeks, they know what your handle is. So that if you ever walked into the store and you're like, "Oh, I'm Bebo Mia Inc." That's my handle. That they'd be like, "Oh my goodness, it's so nice to put a name to the face." Like that, oh cool, you always are liking our stuff. And you guys know, as a small business, every single time somebody shares your stuff, likes it, like you remember, because
Mhm.
we don't have 100,000 followers and we don't get 300,000 views on our reels, although that did happen and I was real excited. But like, in general, you guys are sitting somewhere between 10 likes and 150 likes. Like that's where we're all living. If there's somebody else is consistently doing better than that, good on you. That's awesome. Keep doing it. And I hope it's working out and it brings you joy. But like, so you notice when the same name keeps coming up.
Mhm.
And then I want you to start thinking about collaborations you can do with the businesses that feel good. Now, just because your clients might go there, I also want you to make sure that they're aligned with your values. So if you're really big into ARAO, so anti-racist, anti-oppressive work, make sure you follow a business that is taking the active steps to participate in ARAO. If you are serving plus size clients, make sure you go into the shops and the businesses that are also celebrating people in bigger bodies. If you are an activist, or like your business is queer positive or celebrating queer families, again, you want to go in, and not just people who put pride flags on their business or on their website, but people who are actively, doing things to advocate for, protect, and celebrate queer folks. And so that also just like is a caveat. So do a scan, make sure they fit in all the right buckets, and then go in and introduce yourself. Now, here's a tip that I really like, because sometimes when you feel like you're the smaller business going into the bigger business, you feel like you're either going in to be a bother or you're asking for a favor. And one of the things you can do to flip it on its head is you go in pretending all the clients you're ever going to have are standing behind you. And your job is to make sure that they're safe, or that they're going to get great service or have a good experience coming into this bigger, quote, bigger business. And you're asking them the questions to make sure that you would want to refer to them. Because you might be small right now, but anybody you do send, you want them to come back around and be like, yo, that was like really great. I had such a great shopping experience. They were really helpful. I felt really safe there. They made me feel really good. I loved how they treated my children, like whatever it is. you do not want them to come back and being like they were rude, or I felt uncomfortable, or they kept staring at me and I thought, like, like we were going to shoplift. Like they didn't have any sizes for me and they only went to a size 10, like these kinds of things. And so that is like, it makes you go in like really like fiercely protective of all the people that you want to serve as your future clients. So you're almost going in to be like, are you good enough to be on my referral roster? Because I refer all the time. Like my referral pages are like my database is massive because anytime my client's like, I'm thinking about, or like, have you heard of, or I'm trying to find I want to be able to be like, here's your options. If you want to go to the east side of the city, this one, west side, this one. If you'd like to support a Black owned business, this one. You're queer, so I recommend this queer practitioner. Like I want them for anything that they want, from products, services, anything. And so I'm really strategic when I build my roster, and I want to go into those places and make sure that they're good enough for my clients. And once I shifted with that attitude, instead of going in, because I used to feel sick, I would dread it, y'all. I would put it off to be like, okay, I should probably go meet the local fill in the blank. But I'd go in being like, hey, hi, hi, I'm an introvert. I don't love talking to strangers. And and so I'd always be like, what am I asking? And then I always felt like I needed to ask them for something. Hi, could you put up my poster? Hi, could you share my post? Hi, do you have clients you can send me? And I had that kind of like yucky energy because I didn't know. And now I know more. And as soon
Right.
as I was like, I only want to make sure that you're good enough, it really, I don't know, it changed the energy and it made me feel really strong and powerful. And it made me feel like, I don't like like a power hierarchy because that yuck woof, but it made me feel a little bit more dominant, but that's not the word I want because I don't think anyone should feel dominant over
Like
another person.
like confident maybe?
Great. Yes.
Okay,
Great. Thank
confident.
you.
Okay.
Listen, the patriarchy took my language and they're like, just use the language of white supremacy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I would say, and then once you vetted them, just like made sure that they're cool and that you would want to send people to them, then think of some really cool ways that you could kind of cross pollinate. And that process will take a little bit. So don't like rush in, or like, come up with a strategy and maybe like 10 ideas that you'd like. And when I say ideas, these can be things like an event that you do together. It could be a blog series. You could do Instagram lives together, like an interview style. You could host something. You could have like a social media takeover. Um, you could do a drive, like a diaper drive, can drive, food drive, coat drive, and collect, like you can go around to all the local businesses and it's hosted by you and supported by fill in the blank with all the brick and mortar if you don't have a brick and mortar. Like there's so many cool things that you can do, but I want you all to first, when you walk into that place, have that those people would know who you are. And that's where social media can serve small businesses, is that it gives us a platform to really easily relationship build. But then once you start doing stuff together, then all of those people are talking about you. And that's how you get doubling your clients. That's how you get 50 new clients. That's how you fill a class, whatever your goal is. But it's not an overnight thing. Like I went through those steps. I went through them pretty quickly, but those, each time you do a batch of that, it's like a couple of weeks worth of work, but it's solid, and you build this trust. Now here's my pro tip at the end here that I want to add, is you have to consistently do it. So this was something that I have learned through mistakes, is that I started and then I was like, oh, everybody knows who I am. But people stop, like people leave those businesses close, your values might shift. That somebody's like anti whatever's like the current hot topic, and you're pro. And so now there's a rift. And so you actually need to maintain this by doing this every quarter. So you don't have to do it as much as you did when you were a brand new business, because you do have some like momentum that comes from word of mouth from your clients and stuff. But you do have to always have a new influx of community growth and community outreach so that you can keep a really healthy and consistent cycle of like your community size, because you're going to have people that fall off for a whole bunch of reasons, and you need to be replacing them as fast as they leave. So if you set this as something you actively do at least once a quarter for maintenance, so every 4 months or so, or just like all the time, like Angel and I are now homies, so there's somebody, and then I guarantee at some point this week I lost somebody in my network that I didn't know I lost until I go to outreach for graphic design, and they don't have their business anymore. And so now
Right.
that's been replaced. And so it is a very simple process. And this is where, if you have any minutes to spend on social media, don't chase virality and instead do this. I have a mini course, by the way. It's only $10 because I just want people to do this. And it literally walks you through this, including the scripts. So I'll share that with you, Angel, after.
Okay.
But I want people to, like, instead of spending thousands of dollars trying to get viral videos, I was like, it's $10, yo. Like, this is the step by step process of how you can grow your community. Because I just want everybody to take their entrepreneurial stuff back to simple. And we don't need to overcomplicate it like we are.
I agree. Yeah, we definitely overcomplicate it a lot. And it goes back to, kind of what we talked about in the beginning is that everyone's trying to do what they see someone else do and trying to get success the way they saw someone else get success. And that's just not how it is. You have to find your own success and what works for you. And I think once we all start doing that, we will overcomplicate stuff a little bit less.
And we've become dependent on, like, that we can just sit on our couch and put up a post, or we can buy some Facebook ads. And again, for some things that's great, and that's all they have to do. But if you're working in a community, like in an area of your city, you have to get out into the city. And so, I mean, the number one thing that my alumni will come back to me with are like, how do I get more clients, or how do I get clients? Even though I walk them through. And so I'll do a consultation with them, and I'll be like, have you made a flyer? Like an OG flyer that's
Right.
little people.
Little people, yes, little people who always feels like he has to interrupt me in podcasting. Go, bye. Thank you. Sorry.
That's all right.
But go ahead. Have you made a
I
flyer?
always said that. Yeah, so I would suggest, every time I ask, I'm like, what have you done? And they're like, well, I put up a post, I made a TikTok account, I got my website up. And I'm like, do you have a flyer? Like something really fun, but like really clear with some solution.
Mhm.
What your problem solves with a QR code. And then Canva makes it for you for free. And then
Yes, they do.
you print 50 of them and you put them up at the rec center. So my students all target, their target market's always expecting and new parents. So
Right.
that's why this instruction makes sense. But I was like, go to the library, go to the rec center, go to the local businesses, go to the toy shops, and put them up on the poles of the telephone poles on the walk to school. Like, put them up. Like, these are all free places outside of
Mm.
the cost of 50 pages. And if you have a Canva Pro account, that's another whatever, $17 a month. But like, for less than $50, you will have your stuff everywhere. Make it easy to see from a distance, have a QR code, have a catchy few words on it, like 3 to 5 words max. And I was like, everybody will just start knowing what your brand is. They'll be like, oh yeah, I think I saw that. Where did I see that? Because they saw it everywhere.
Right.
My students are like, how do I get clients? I was like, get off your tush, print 50 flyers, and put them up all over your town, because you're going to be walking all over your town to serve folks. You're going to go to their house to do their prenatals. You're going to be walking to the local fill in the blank to help them with whatever. Like, just set up your boundaries of where you want to serve and blanket it with almost free marketing. All of those places have community boards, and it's free. And so, because we keep spending money on Facebook ads, y'all, mastering Meta, that's the umbrella for Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. Mastering Meta is a beast. It's so expensive. It used to be cheap and cheerful that you could throw some stuff up and, like, get your stuff out. But now then you're competing in like a very large arena for whatever service you have. So, like, go back, grassroots is where it's at. It's what we did successfully for like ever until the internet, which was like 5 minutes ago.
Right.
And so go back to that. The phone tree worked because everyone just like talked to each other. And so if you want, especially if you do heart-centered work or work that's like a little bit intimate, like you're going into people's homes or like you're doing some sort of private care for them, you need to have other people vouching for you. And the fastest way to do that is through building really great connections with other people and businesses and brands.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bianca. I have enjoyed this conversation so much. You have given so many awesome nuggets of advice, and I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we head out?
Well, we're always community building. So if you want to check out our community, you can head over to Instagram or Facebook. We're at Bebo Mia Inc. That's BEBOMIAINC. I forgot to spell everything. Sorry, y'all. It's been a long day.
It's
Bebo
okay.
Mia Inc. And there's cool ways that you can hang out. We do lots of fun stuff, both free and low cost offerings. And we would love if you wanted to come check it out. If you wanted to learn more about becoming a doula or having any kind of feminist business consulting, anything like that, that's the place you want to go.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'll make sure to get all of that linked into the show notes as well to make it easy access for people to find it. So, well, thank you so much. And I'm glad that we were able to record before the storm got too bad there. So,
Thank you. Yeah,
you're
me too. Me
welcome.
too.
Well,
Thank
I
you,
hope,
everybody.
yes. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And I will talk with you soon.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone. Ciao.
Thanks. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Modco podcast. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and learned something from it. Be sure to share this episode with a friend, family member, colleague, or anyone you think will enjoy it. Make sure you hit the follow or subscribe button. And if you love the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcasting app. That helps others to find us and gets us listed in other show recommendations. So you all know that I run on coffee, and so does the show. If you'd like to buy us a coffee, you can do so by clicking on the link in the show notes. Thank you so much, and chat soon.